speaking of the uniparty nature of foreign policy in our country, unfortunately, Democrats and Republicans alike have been systematically working to oppress and brutalize the nation of Cuba and its people. We not only are trying to more effectively exploit the Cuban people, but are also working to eliminate a left-wing government that is actually working for the interests of the working class people in its country. Cuba has worked to systematically provide for their people in ways that the United States can't even imagine. Ever since the year after the Cuban Revolution successfully took control over Cuba, we've had an embargo on the nation of Cuba, which means that any ship that trades with any company on the island of Cuba cannot then trade with any company in the United States. It is pretty impossible to, it's not impossible, it's just extremely difficult and extremely expensive for Cuba to acquire resources like concrete, steel, food, oil for electricity, basic sanitation equipment, hospital equipment. If you have a pacemaker in Cuba and you die, they take the pacemaker out of you so they can use it in somebody else. Because Cuba is so strapped for resources, especially medical resources, because of the American embargo. The American embargo of the nation of Cuba has been directly responsible for the deaths of thousands. I mean, like, it has to be like tens of thousands of people by this point. Under Obama worked to kind of roll back a lot of the really strong embargo and sanctions that were on the nation of Cuba. But of course, Donald Trump immediately reversed that, and now in his second term has really ramped up pressure on Cuba. Cuba is very reliant on oil from other countries to power their power grid for, like, you know, schools and hospitals and government buildings and people's homes and stuff. The Trump administration has been putting a lot of pressure on the countries that were sending a lot of that oil to Cuba in an effort to increase pressure on Cuba and to increase suffering on Cuban citizens so that they will revolt against the leadership of their government, depose them, and give control of the government back to the United States of America. A big reason why we militarily invaded Venezuela was to cut off the supply of oil from Venezuela to Cuba. Now, Mexico actually provides more oil to Cuba than Venezuela did, but we have been threatening massive tariffs on the nation of Mexico, on Claudia Sheinbaum, to get her to stop sending oil to Cuba, which Mexico has been working to, you know, provide literally life-saving resources to the nation of Cuba that Cuba does not have access to, only because the United States has placed such a overbearing embargo upon them.